What's up, Fantasy Heads? This is Mitchell, and I'm here with the first installment of what's going to be going on every week, and it's going to be called Respond React. It's going to be where I discuss my observations of week one and how I think to, view them going forward in terms of your fantasy teams. Start off, week one was a real solid week. It was pretty eventful and a lot of different things to look at. And I guess to start with the video, I'll just mention some of the calls I had made for the prior week for the week one video I made. It looks like I was on with most all of the calls of the suggestions I made. There were two that were absolutely blown. One in particular was the Steelers D. If you started them, they didn't get you much of anything. And matter of fact, they let Cleveland's offense score way too much over them, and it was just surprising. I really didn't think Cleveland's offense rather was going to come out gunning like that, and that was a bad call. And the other one was my suggested pickup or suggested eyeball in case you didn't pick it up. A suggested watch was Miles Austin. I think it's clear that it's going to be Andrew Hawkins who's going to be the guy to watch in Cleveland. That just so far. This may change, but it definitely wasn't evident in week one. So we'll pass on that one. And so with Respond React, though, we're just going to go with, I got a number of categories that I'm going to speak on. And it's going to be my responses and my reactions to all of them. And first, we're going to start with most legit thing I saw in week one. Any of Seattle's fantasy options. The football week started Thursday with a bang. Everything that's worth owning in Seattle is absolutely legit. Whether it be Russell Wilson as a pocket quarterback who's probably going to look much more mature this season than he has the prior two. Whether it's all the talk that everybody thought Marshawn Lynch, because of the prior couple years of rushing so much and him having turmoil within Seattle, is going to slow him down. I do not think that's the case. And as I had said in another video, he was still a round one pick to me. And whether Percy Harvin would be worthy of a second receiver, I think that's quite clear. They're going to be using him all over in the backfield as well as receiving. I mean, if anybody forgot who he was in Minnesota, he gave you a nice, and it was only a small example of what he can do. If he can keep the headaches down and be injury-free, you're looking at somewhat of a steal for the fact of where he was pretty much drafted. And in particular, the Seattle defense. I've been known to be a proponent of don't draft defense early. I'll just stream them all year if I have to. But anybody who had took that early bite on Seattle's D, you might have taken a pretty good gamble. It's something that I'm never really going to do, but I think you may have took a good gamble because that defense, not only are they legit, they look 25% or better than they did last year. And last year they were damn near perfect. So, and because they look that good, I'm going to say something else that it made me recognize. I don't care who the defense plays. If I have the quarterback facing them, I'm not playing them. I have been telling a few people during the week that certain quarterbacks are matchup proof, and particularly Aaron Rodgers, who faced him in week one, and that even if they had whatever backup quarterback, I would start Aaron Rodgers. If I have this, after what I saw Thursday, whatever starting quarterback I have, there's no way I'm playing him against the Seattle defense. So not sure what y'all gonna do, but I don't care what quarterback I have. When they face them, I'm finding another option. Unless my bench depth quarterback is that bad because anything can, it could be some options to work, but I'm trying to avoid any quarterback going against the Seattle D. The second topic is going to be running backs whose performance pissed me off this week. What if I was to tell you that the two, when I'm going to speak of this in terms of ESPN fantasy points, like I said before, what if I was to tell you before week 1 started that the top 3 consensus fantasy picks would give you a total of 21 points? You wouldn't believe that, would you? That happened. What if I was to say one of those 3, the highest between the 3, was 11 points? Would you believe that? You wouldn't believe that either. LeSean McCoy, Adrian Peterson, and Jamaal Charles combined for 21 fantasy points. That's beyond unheard of. No one would have ever thought that that would have been the way they came out. And though LeSean McCoy and Adrian Peterson, LeSean with 11 points and Adrian with 8 points, nearly were identical in terms of carries. They both had a pretty good carry number, 21 for 75-ish yards. Those don't concern me. Those were just, started off kind of slow. But the Jamaal Charles thing kind of concerns me. 11 total touches in the game for 2 fantasy points. I have him in a number of leagues as my number 1 pick. And for Andy Reid to distribute only 11 touches to him, that really does concern me. It makes me more than anything think about this foot thing when he was moving. There's something, they're never going to play their hand. And it's making me think that he's a little more injured than they're leading on, because you don't let a weapon like that go to waste. And he tried to acknowledge it and say it was in the game. It was he didn't game plan correctly, but I don't buy that. He's too good a coach to allow that. So I'm not saying panic, and you definitely don't even want to do a buy necessarily buy lows, because no one's gonna let him go. You can try in your league to do a buy low where you offer up something to get Jamaal Charles because of his performance. You can try it. But nobody needs to panic on any of those 3, and especially in terms of Jamaal Charles, where he looked so paltry in the game. Just take it as it is. It's something to watch, though, and I'm definitely going to keep my eyes on it. Receivers who piss me off. What if I was to tell you that between the top 3 of the top 10 receivers would have a total of 12 points? Dez Bryant with 5, Demaryius Thomas with 4, and Vincent Jackson with 3. All of them are different cases, though. Dez Bryant was a case of just Tony Romo being just horrid. I mean, just actually scary looking. Like he didn't even look like a professional quarterback Sunday. Demaryius was a function of the other Thomas just going crazy. And Vincent Jackson was the Vincent Jackson that you know. He'll have a 3-point game, and then he'll have a 30-point game, and then a 15-point game, and then a 2-point game. It happens in ebbs and flows, and you have to take the good with the bad with owning them. But it's just disheartening when you got all that talent in weeks where you're trying to win, and you're trying to win, and what wins you or loses you the week could be often how your studs perform. And when they perform like this, obviously it's something that's concerning. And then you got to get people like a Cordero Patterson who exploded, or Julius Thomas again who exploded, or Matt Ryan who exploded to bail you out because your first 2-3 picks in the draft let you down. It's always hard when that happens. So, but again, nothing to panic about. And because of that, don't make crazy trades and do things too early. Those are all 3 stud receivers. Just give it a chance to flesh yourself out. And hopefully the situations within each one of them take care of itself, and particularly this Tony Romo to Dez Bryant thing. backs who scared me this weekend. The first ones I mentioned were just who pissed me off, but these are backs who scared me. Doug Martin, Zach Stacy, Bishop Sankey, Trent Richardson, Stephen Ridley. I don't think Doug Martin's who we thought he was. After I watched that game, after seeing him run, he looked terrible. It's not that he couldn't get anything going. It just looked like he's not a professional running back. He's not a starter in this league. He looked really bad. I don't know what happened between year one and the first injury that cost him last year to now, but this guy isn't the guy we thought he was. Muscle hamster. I'm thinking. I don't think we have anything with him. I think it's going to be what it is, and I think we're going to have a bust player and an even worse year. That doesn't mean sell him now. That means hold him and watch for the next couple of weeks to see if this actually comes to pass, because I'm worried about Doug Martin. I don't think we got anything with him. Zach Stacy, he scares me because this is too much of a committee thing with Benny Cunningham. They obviously don't trust Zach Stacy there, and we knew he wasn't the most talented running back, but we thought he had a sure handle on the starting job. It doesn't seem to be the case. It seems like they're not convinced about him, and if they're not convinced, we're not going to be convinced. So Zach Stacy is going to be a concern. I'm not saying, and I'm also not saying overreact with him, but it may be worth keeping a heavy eye on Benny Cunningham going forward. Bishop Sankey, 6 carries, 25 yards. I think all the naysayers who spoke about him in less than positive light, I think they're probably right. I don't think Bishop Sankey's going to be anything. Sean Green outshined him heavily, and I think that's going to continue going forward. If you can get anything on the dollar, if you can get 50 to 75 cents on the dollar for Bishop Sankey in a trade, I would do it, because I don't think he has anything. Stephen Ridley, I think he's about as bad as a mentally shot quarterback right now. I think his confidence is gone. Stephen Ridley there's going to be no production that's going to be valid with him. There's never going to be a week that you're willing to start him. So again, if you can get 30 cents on the dollar with Stephen Ridley, I'd let that move go. And after week 2, maybe week 3, he's going to become droppable, I think. I truly do. Shane Vereen's going to get all the work there, and subsequent backs behind that, they're going to get the work. I don't see Stephen Ridley giving us anything this year. And that's why I avoided him in every draft that I did this year. And last but not least, Trent Richardson. I'm sorry to tell you guys, folks, but that man is finished. I saw him in Alabama, and I saw him in his first year. But I don't know if his psyche got broke between the fact that Cleveland was willing to trade him, or Cleveland traded him because they saw something in him that they knew wouldn't work for the future. But Trent Richardson is finished. If there's anybody you know that's an Alabama fan or a Trent Richardson fan, or somebody who'd be willing to give you something for him, try to make that deal. At this point, I would much rather have Terrence West than Trent Richardson. I'm not saying after week 1 make that trade, but on my roster, I would rather have Terrence West easy than Trent Richardson. I truly believe this guy is done. So you keep your eye out on that, because I believe he will be hitting waiver wires and hitting drops after week 2, 3 for sure. Next topic, young backs to watch. Devontae Freeman, Kyrie Robinson, Terrence West, and Isaiah Crowell. Devontae Freeman, he didn't get much going in terms of carries or whatever, but every time he ran the ball, I watched that game as well. He looked explosive and hard running. I mean, whenever this Atlanta backfield thing gets sorted, I believe he's going to be one of the last men standing. And it might not be till week 9 or further, but keep him on your watch list. Keep an eye on him. Kyrie Robinson, same thing. Very few carries, but he looked real explosive, similar to how Devontae Freeman looked. So he's also who you want to keep an eye on. Terrence West is probably the most important among these because this Ben Tate thing showed its true colors already. Ben Tate was running well, but he got hurt. Terrence West got the ball and ran even better for 100 yards. He would be the number one running back pickup for me this week if he's out there in leagues, and he's out there in a number of them. So try to target him this week. And Isaiah Crowell, also of the Browns, he's definitely somebody to watch. I wouldn't try picking him up this week, or I want to wait and see what that is because that was all fluky. That was touchdowns. He got very little carries, but touchdowns for the fact that he wasn't apparently part of the game plan, that means something. And they say he was preparing like he was the first back, and that goes a long way. If Terrence West has some downtime or have some down weeks and Tate is somewhere out or whatever, Isaiah Crowell becomes something to look at. So keep an eye on him more than anything else. Don't make a move, but keep an eye. Receivers, they should be fully owned. Brandon Cooks, y'all saw it. I pushed it for him for early videos that I did in terms of a draft day steal. That was my big call that I had been pushing for early. And just keep your eye on him. He's going to be one of the most fun players to own this year, I can tell, because every time he does something, it's just something. And ironically, he's still out there in more than 34% of leagues as of this weekend. He needs to be fully owned at 100% before the end of the week. That should be the number one active wide receiver pickup. And the rest, it should be fully owned. Allen Hurd, Kelvin Benjamin, and Marcus Wheaton. All are heavily unowned right now. And Kelvin Benjamin should be 100% owned after this week. Marcus Wheaton should be near close to it because Ben Roethlisberger really wants to use him. And Allen Hurd, I think is going to be a little bit of, I don't think it's a fluke, but it's going to be, he's not as, I'm not trusting that big fluky game as much as some, but I think he should be rostered in most cases because there's probably somebody out there because of his talent that he's better than on your roster. Next topic, 2 players no need to worry about anymore. Because there was some concern about these 2 guys coming into drafts. Le'Veon Bell, it's done. No need to worry. He's good to go. He had probably the most impressive fantasy week to me, simply because we thought he was going to have more of a timeshare than he did. This dude was a monster on the ground, had 100 yards rushing and almost 90 yards catching, and a touchdown. I mean, I think we know what that is. I was thinking this whole weed thing was going to get in the way of his confidence, and this LeGarrette Blount thing was. I tell you, he's good for first impressions because he did it on his first day out from that injury thing from last year and first day back from all this controversy this year. I'm rolling with I got Le'Veon Bell in a lot of leagues and was getting him good for a good steal because of the controversy, and that's looking like a good steal so far. And Steve Smith. It's a lot of people that thought that Steve Smith's career was over, and he was sliding. I'm talking about double-digit rounds heavily in drafts. But this week, week 1 rather, he was the most targeted player in fantasy among receivers. 15 targets, 118 yards, and a touchdown. I'm not saying that he's going to be targeted like that every week, but I am saying the other Smith there is who he is. And I ain't never wanted to own Torrey Smith in any league because he's nothing but a downfield, long-distance threat. That's all he is. I've never liked Torrey Smith. This guy, I don't care if he's a possession guy. I don't care if Steve Smith is going to be used as a slot guy now. He's going to get things moving. That's one of the toughest NFL players you've ever seen. And I don't care about his age. He right now has an upgrade in quarterback over any he's ever had in terms of arm strength. I don't like Joe Flacco. Don't like him as a player or as a fantasy option, but he's a better pocket passer than Cam was, and better than Jake Delhomme ever thought he could be. So this is going to be for real, people. If you can get Steve Smith somehow at a bargain, try to see if you can make a move for him. You don't want to get rid of a stud for him, but Steve Smith's going to be the real deal. Basically, what this is anybody who got him late, you got a great bargain. Two players to not get too excited about. Chris Ivory, though it seemed like he had even carry distribution with Chris Johnson, I wouldn't buy it because he's also like Ben Tate. He's always hurt, and he didn't get any catches also, so he isn't much there. He didn't have any PPR effectiveness, though he looked good with 102 rushing yards. And if you got him, that's a bonus. But what I'm saying is, don't get into this whole Chris Ivory's going to be a stud thing. Not necessarily. Watch this for a few weeks because Chris Ivory is one of the biggest headaches to own in fantasy. Also, Donnie Avery. He was third in the league in targets this week with 7 catches for 84 yards. That's going to get shut down as soon as Dwayne Bowe gets back in this week. Donnie Avery has always done that, even back when he was with the Colts. He'll give you this week, and then he'll be a waiver pickup, and then Donnie Avery just falls flat. Kind of let that go. You know what I'm saying? He isn't anybody to add, especially right now. And like I said, this was a product of what was this week as opposed to more than anything else. Two more topics. One of them is what I call stand pat, but sit panicked. And it's dealing with 3 quarterbacks. Tony Romo. I already said how I feel about him. 3 interceptions before he had his first touchdown. He looked like he couldn't even read defenses like a professional. He looked like a high school player out there who got thrown into an NFL game to bail them out. I mean, but with Tony Romo, you have this. This isn't like the first time we've seen this Tony Romo, or Tony Romo is oh my God, it was just a disappointment in terms of how he usually does. He does this, but I didn't think he would come out in week 1 doing that. Man, he's going to be somebody if you have him, you don't drop him right now, especially because he could be your number 1 quarterback if you waited. But this is very concerning to me. So keep an eye on him, man. Keep your eye on the waiver too, and see if there's somebody you could add to possibly, play over him when the time comes. RG3. He didn't have an awful game. He was pretty accurate. His completion ratio to passes wasn't bad, but he's a drag in fantasy when he can't be himself. This injury thing and this whole we want to make RG3 the guy that everyone thinks he is, because we're not still 100% sold or sure whether RG3 is this true NFL football stud that they wanted to be. But at this rate, with what they're trying to do with him, he's no better than anyone else that's a backup, including like say Kirk Cousins, because if they don't let him run some, I know what they're trying to do and curb his injury. He could curb his injuries by being the same as he is on the ground, but just sliding. If he had some damn sense and slide, but they're trying to get him. They gave him no design runs, and they're trying to get rid of him, and that's going to result in a stagnant. Basically, it's going to result in RG3 not being able to be RG3. And if he's not RG3, he's barely a rosterable quarterback. So maybe they'll catch on to this before it's too late. But to me, I really think that RG3 is going to be a stressful own. If you got him, like I said, you got to stand pat, but you're going to be panicked about him. Hopefully things turn around and hopefully they catch on. And the last quarterback is actually one of the calls that I made that I felt was going to be a good year. Tom Brady. He didn't look good the other day. It looked like he was unrecognizable. I've never seen him look that bad. He looked like completely uninspired. His decision making was shot. And the offensive line is not giving him any help, and he's got no one to throw to. if it isn't Gronk or Shane Vereen, he's got nothing, and he knows it. And I think it's gonna affect him for the year. That looks like that's a bad call I had. If Tom Brady's your number one quarterback, I feel for you. It's time to acquire a solid backup. If a Carson Palmer is sitting out there, excuse me, if even if Geno Smith is sitting out there, he would be worth rostering at this point because, and I'm not saying necessarily start him over Tom Brady now and panicking about it fully, but you got to sit panicked with this, but you got to hold on to him because hopefully this MVP type Super Bowl winning ways will come into play. But I think he's kind of like giving up in some ways, and it's showing because he's tired of having no weapons, and it's taking its toll on him. But hopefully things turn around. And then the last thing is going to be spy versus spy. Real quick, with Knowshon Moreno versus Lamar Miller, I think we know who that timeshare is going to go to. Moreno was nearly the double point in terms of touches to Lamar Miller. But the thing is, both of them looked pretty good. So it's good to hold on to them both, but anybody who thought this was going to be Lamar Miller as a starter, I think you see good. And another thing, to give Knowshon Moreno a little credit, he ain't as bad as everybody always have talked about him. I thought that from UGA he wasn't as bad as once he got to the league and people started kind of talking down on him. I'm like, man, he's pretty solid at UGA. I used to watch him. So he ain't this running back that everybody tries to talk him down to be. He's a solid running back. And if he can stay healthy, he's dependable. So if you got Knowshon Moreno, he's a good value this year. And the last one is the Andre Ellington versus Jonathan Dwyer thing. We was all fooled, folks. You can just trash the Jonathan Dwyer thing. Even with the opportunities he had, you saw what he was about. He was just a plotting running back out there. It was nothing to discuss. Andre Ellington did what none of us thought he was going to do. He gutted it out, and he was decent. I kind of hope he will sit his butt down and get healthy before he becomes unusable in fantasy, as opposed to this. But he's going to know what's best, and I think if he can get somewhat healthy again, I think we may, if because of this injury, in my honest opinion, I think we may have lost the value we were expecting from Ellington. But I think it's clear that there's going to be no competition in terms of this Jonathan Dwyer thing. If you picked him up, he's going to be the first guy if you picked him up before Sunday, he's going to be the first guy you're going to want to let go with this week's waiver claim. So I think that should be it. And on the last note, I just wanted to give a few people something that had been coming up on Twitter, just some understanding of something. People have been, asking me a lot, should I pick up this guy? Should I pick up that guy in terms of because they got a lot of touchdowns or whatever. And people even ask me personally about it. And I want y'all to know something. In fantasy football, it's something that I came up with a while ago. When it comes to importance, it's the 3 T's. Touches, targets, and touchdowns. And touchdowns is the least important of all of them. It's the one, touchdowns is obviously what make fantasy weeks big. Look at Julius Thomas. But touches and targets are speaking on opportunity. Those who get the most touches and targets, it means that they're the ones that's being looked at, because any one of those touches / targets could result in a touchdown. But a couple of targets here and there for touchdowns, that doesn't mean anything. Isaiah Crowell this week is the biggest example. He was one of the highest scoring running backs in fantasy this week because of those 2 touchdowns, but he only got, 3 carries? You don't get blinded by touchdowns. Touchdowns can be a bit fluky. They can be vulture related. Somebody comes in and swoops it. John Kuhn is a perfect example of that with Green Bay. It's not about touchdowns, folks. It's about, when it comes to running backs, touches, which means catches and carries. And when it's about receivers, it's about targets. How many times the quarterback is looking for them. Keep that in mind. And I'm not saying that touchdowns don't matter, but the first 2 are far more important. So yeah, that's gonna wrap that up. This week's version of Respond React, and hopefully y'all learned something from this. And like I say, follow me still on Twitter. If you got any sit start, and speaking of that, this with sits and starts, I'm not doing a video about that. If you got sit start questions for Thursday, Sunday, and Monday of upcoming subsequent weeks, ask me on Twitter or in the comments, because it's a relative thing. There's no reason for me to do starts and sits compared to who in a video. So hope you guys had a good week. It was successful. My week was pretty good. Out of 10 leagues, I won 7 of the 10, so it's 70% nice start. Hope you guys had a good start too, and we'll see you with the next video that I'm going to be posting today, and it's going to be waiver pickups for the week. It's going to be the top 10 waiver additions. So till then, see you next time.